So much for being with us today, and this sound right here. Yes, it's Johnny Cash Friday, but it's also our Conservative Future segment, and we have in the studio with us once again, Hannah Webb joins us. Hannah, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I love being here.
Yes, yeah, that's perfect, yeah. All right, so one rumor that I heard that I now know to be true, there was a billboard that has gone up in Northeast Arkansas, and it's a Jan Morgan billboard. It's paid for by, friends of Jan Morgan. And I was told that the governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson, wanted to know specifically who was responsible for that billboard. And so he called the mayor of Jonesboro and eventually found who the owner was. And there was basically this Spanish Inquisition of, who is responsible for putting this billboard up. Now, Hannah, I understand that you donated to have this billboard put up. Is that correct?
I sure did. And so let me disclaimer here. I'm taking my College Republican hat off. So this is by no means the opinion of the College Republicans. These are the opinions of Hannah Webb. So, yes, Governor, I donated money to this billboard. If that scares you, intimidates you, if you have an issue with that, by all means, call me, text me, email me, come see me. I don't care. I don't understand why you're so intimidated by it. If you don't like that she has billboards up, put your own up. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Governor, could you please explain to me why you're so intimidated by this? Why it is so pressing to you to know the specific names of these citizens who chose to put this billboard up?
How did you find out that this was going on? I mean, there was obviously a group of you. I mean, what actually happened? Tell us what happened according to how you understand the event.
Well, if you want to start from the beginning, there's just a group of us here in NEA. We're NEA for Jan, and we're just a committee. We meet every week, and all about getting Jan elected. And so we're in charge of the NEA section. So we had some billboards donated to us. It was our responsibility to put the vinyl up on them. Wonderful. So we began collecting donations for that. And a lot of the money came from people on the committee, people outside the committee, random people who love Jan who was like, yes, I want to help. So you're talking about these are your genuine. I'm a college student. Do you think that I've got, just extra money laying around to be handing out?
Right.
No. I believe in Jan so much, and I understand it is so important to get her face on a billboard. And so these are your grassroots people donating as much as they possibly can to get her in office. I mean, that's all that it is. So we came together, we got it printed, we got them put up. I mean, that's it, point blank. So we did.
Right.
It's democracy.
And so where were you, or what, when you found out that the governor, what exactly happened as far as who did the governor call?
So, as I have heard, the governor called Mayor Perrin.
And the mayor of Jonesboro.
Yes.
Okay.
And mayor's like, well, I don't know. So he called a former mayor at Bono. And he was like, well, I don't know. So he called the owners of the billboards. And he was like, oh, man, what have I got myself into? And so,
I bet the owner was kind of intimidated.
It's just like, oh, my gosh, the governor of Arkansas is demanding to know who put this billboard up. When, obviously, citizens of Jan Morgan did. Says it right there on the billboard. It's financial law. You got to put that on there.
Right.
And so, he called us and he was like, what do we do about this? And then so he eventually ended up telling them, it's really none of your business who put it up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I just feel like, wow. It's certainly a form of intimidation. Or at the very least, there's, if you're just in the billboard business and all of a sudden the governor's like, well, who, you would feel intimidated. You would feel, okay, here's somebody in power who is, giving me, basically interrogating me, trying to figure out who my customers are.
I say he should capitalize on it. Now he's got some publicity.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go. Sell it once we take our Jan ones down, of course. Sell it. Hey, this is the famous governor billboard.
Yeah.
Come get it.
Yeah, exactly. This is a great placement for your message.
Yes, thank you for the publicity.
Yeah. And maybe Conduit News will put a billboard up there.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
So more than anything, though, I'm flattered. I'm flattered that we have caught his attention.
Yeah.
And so, take it as it is.
Well, I appreciate you being so bold and saying that, and I know you took your college Republican hat off, and I appreciate that, but, it's so the hat still to the side.
Right.
Why are you supporting Jan Morgan? Why do you believe in her?
Okay, so I'll give you my I Stand with Jan spiel here. We'll start from the beginning. So a little over a year ago,
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Monday. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. It's Conduit News Radio. The phone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799 if you want to contribute to the program. And we also are broadcasting live over at facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News or conduitnews.com, or look us up on YouTube. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube there, or subscribe and, click the notifications. By the way, the Hannah Webb, we interviewed Hannah Webb, who was partly responsible. She donated money to Jan Morgan for governor. Well, no, I'm sorry. She didn't donate money. She put money in for a billboard to put a Jan Morgan billboard up. And that video of the interview of her talking about how basically sitting governor starts to turn into Sherlock Holmes to try to deduce who it is in this community or that community that's paying to put up a billboard of Jan Morgan and his political opponent. And it's a really gut-wrenching interview when you realize that this is just part of living in America, and yet you have the intimidation tactics coming from the highest office in the state of Arkansas. And I'm sorry, that's the way I would describe it, as intimidation tactics. I'm sure other people would say differently. They know it's just the governor trying to find out information. I mean, the governor. Anyway, go check out that video. We've got it playing during our online-only breaks. Again, facebook.com/Conduit News. But that video doing very well over the weekend. Getting around now to, see, it's like, what is it now? 1.5K right now. And it's kind of, spreading pretty quickly right now. And I think that's just because people are kind of like, wow, you got to see this. This is not what a sitting governor does who is got a lead he's comfortable with or got a poll that he is comfortable with. That's not what a sitting governor does, especially when you look at the fact that this is just somebody trying to participate in the political process who's young. And isn't that what we want? At least that's what we say that we want. Folks, I am actually flying blind today. I have no computer in front of me. I have my cell phone, and I actually had to go to the old printer this morning and, utilize some dead trees. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm a little, if it feels a little different. It's because it is different this morning because I don't have a computer. My computer didn't die, but my charger did for like the second time in 6 months. It's frustrating. So I don't know what I'm doing to the charger. Apparently I am, I don't know, just beating them to death. So I decided to order 2 chargers, one that I'm going to leave here and another I'm going to leave at my house so I don't have to constantly, wrap the chargers up. But apparently I think it's me. I do think it's me. And anyway, just first world problems there. So real quick, some international news this morning. For those of you who don't know, last week, President Donald Trump decided to announce that the American presence in Syria is coming to an end. And less than a week later, after hearing this, Bashar al-Assad, apparently, we are supposed to believe, is such a maniac, is so stupid, has psychological tendencies that I would say can only be compared to the Joker, the comic book character the Joker, he decided to do the one thing that would put pressure to leave American troops in Syria. And that would be gassing his own people, quote, again, end quote. So you decide, that's just my little bit, that's just a little tiny observation of mine. I just find it unbelievable that, Syria, we're done. We're done with Syria. Less than a week later, oh, you know what? Assad did the one thing. And it's just, it's crazy to me. Because, again, either Assad is essentially a maniac like the Joker from the comic book The Batman, or there's something else going on here, because if there was an ounce of sanity in Bashar al-Assad of Syria, he would be like, Saddam Hussein hanged, Muammar Gaddafi, he was killed by his own people, drugged through the streets, and they did some things to him that if you look up, you're going to be like, ouch, that hurts. Wouldn't want that to happen to me. And just list the rest of the dictators that it doesn't work out so well when the United States decides to intervene. It's not like Syria or Bashar al-Assad doesn't have access to news articles and the internet to see what happens. So if there's an ounce of sanity left in him, I'm just not sure why in the world he would be like, yeah, this is the right time to use chemical weapons and gas my own people. I'm just, forgive me for being a skeptic, but Donald Trump, we're getting out of Syria less than a week later. I'm going to do the one thing that's going to ensure. Maybe there's something weird. Maybe Bashar al-Assad wants the United States in Syria. I don't think that's the case, though. Anyway, so that's my opinion on international news. I just observe things. I observe what has happened in the past in terms of news stories. And, here's the thing about news stories. If you are one of these people who, like me, doesn't trust the mainstream media here in your own country because, the truth kind of falls through the cracks or the lines get very, very blurry from, news anchors who are trying to give you and disseminate information. They want you to believe it. It's all the way from New York City or all the way from Los Angeles or wherever it's from. And, if you're not going to trust some New York anchor to tell you the truth, why in the world are you going to trust some, Middle East correspondent to tell you the truth? Okay, all right. Seems to be a true statement. That must be exactly what happened. If they can leave the truth on the cutting room floor here in this country, which they do, all I'm saying is we need a healthy American, maybe Bashar al-Assad is the embodiment of Heath Ledger's Joker. It's possible. It sure is possible, but I think that's the only explanation here for why. Now, other people say, no, it's because America's weak. It's because again, okay, well, then this guy's the Joker then. It's because America said they were going to pull out. That's why he did it. It emboldened him. Well, this man wants to die then. This man wants to die and is an insane person. Those, to me, are your two options. Anyway, all right, I know we got to move on. We got to move on from this story, but that's just my little... It was all over the news today because if you don't know, the Syria was actually bombed last night, and it wasn't the United States. The Pentagon is denying that it was us, and you have Iran and Russia. They are saying that it was Israel that was bombing Syria. That it was Israel that did it last night, not us, and it was an air base, and apparently... It's the same air base where Iran launched a drone, a few weeks ago or whatever, that shot down something of Israel's. So, or launched missiles towards Israel. So, anyway, and now Syria is claiming that they shot down all the missiles that were launched at them. So, anyway, at least this is what the news says right now.
I'd like to think that when they heard that the U.S. was pulling the troops out, they got really excited and had a party, and someone pressed the wrong button to drop the disco ball.
Yeah, okay, that's what it was. It's like, oh, yeah. Well, that would be vast incompetence, but yeah. I mean, maybe, who knows? Who put the disco ball button next to the chemical weapon button?
North Korea bombed
like.
Hawaii.
write this. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the same guy that installed the accidental Hawaii is under nuclear attack from North Korea. You know, when they sent that false warning out, it was like, wow, that was just a monumental accident. Yeah, this is the same guy. They're brothers. So, all right, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna reset. On Friday, I told you about an article in the Democrat Gazette concerning the Arkansas tax task force. And there was a good article that brought to the reader's attention this push to eliminate tax exemptions, meaning raise taxes, and they're talking about specifically the grocery tax. And in that article, the governor's campaign spokesperson, Jamie Barker, said that the governor has nothing to do with the task force. Then the governor's nephew, Senator Jim Hendren, said that it's entirely a legislative effort and the governor has nothing to do with the task force. Conduit for Action has a fantastic piece, a fact-checking piece on those statements. Who is really behind the tax task force? We'll tell you and set the record straight next.
Good morning. Good morning. Congratulations, you have made it to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, where we strive to offer politicians the very best in ambiguously specific language, the purpose of which is to allow our politician bosses to grow government and keep their constituents in the dark. This yields two beneficial outcomes. First, the government-growing politicians stay in office, and second, we at the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language get to remain in the shadows and get to keep our jobs. Now, it's time for technocrat training drills. Johnny?
Yes?
A politician wants to use the healthcare system to punish those who have and redistribute their wealth. What is the appropriate language to use in this situation to make an unpopular idea acceptable to the public?
I would emphasize that these ideas would make their healthcare more affordable and make sure the public understands if they already have adequate healthcare, nothing will change for them.
Very good, Johnny. Much progress since last time. Next up, let's have Susie. Susie, your politician has been caught in, dare I say it, a lie.
What kind of a lie?
It doesn't really matter, but in the spirit of the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, I will give you a good hypothetical scenario. Dozens of politicians have been thrown out of office for supporting a socialist healthcare program. So the remaining politicians get together and they pass a bill to, quote, end the program, end quote. But they really want to keep it. What should they do, Susie?
May I ask a question for more information?
Certainly.
Has the word lie been used by the political opposition?
Yes.
I know. They should change the name of the program. Maybe use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the program. So here is a piece from conduitforaction.org. It's a fact check on who is really behind the tax farce, because the governor is now trying to distance himself from his own brainchild because he has a primary opponent. He has a primary opponent, and that's the truth. He is worried, and so now he doesn't want to get tied to any tax increases, even though he has raised taxes on your tires, created a new tax on your tires, lobbied for the internet sales tax, lobbied for the gas tax, all things that would take more and more money out of your pocket and give it to the state of Arkansas. And so, listen to this. This is a really, really good piece. The Legislative Task Force looking at Arkansas taxes proposed a list of 43 possible areas to raise Arkansas taxes. 43. High on their list is increasing the tax on groceries. The excuse for looking at raising grocery taxes is that the reduced rate on groceries is considered to be a tax exemption. We have a better name for the reduced rate on groceries: common sense. Conduit for Action thinks the tax on groceries should be reduced to zero, as in many states. So who's to blame? See, the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette spent considerable newsprint on the question of who is to blame for the tax increase recommendations. Who is it? Is it Asa? Is Asa to blame for it? You see, Jan Morgan, who's running for governor in the Republican primary, blamed her opponent on the 43 exemptions that are being proposed as increases. Governor Hutchinson for the focus of the task farce. Here's an excerpt from the Democrat Gazette. Quote, "Look at the governor's tax reform commission," Morgan said in a recent interview. "It is not there to reform the tax burden and is not there to find ways to lighten the tax burden on the people. Look at what they have done. They are looking for more ways to squeeze blood out of the turnip," she said. End quote. Wow, that's a really good way to put that. Let me stop here, though. I want to highlight this phrase, lighten the tax burden on the people. Boy, isn't that what we need? Isn't that the relief that's actually in the title of the task force? Relief. We need relief. And the only way to truly give relief is to cut taxes. And the correct definition of a tax cut is sending less money to the government than we are currently sending. Conduit goes on here, but Jamie Barker, an employee of the governor, and Senator Jim Hendren, I think Jamie is the campaign arm there. But Jamie Barker and Senator Jim Hendren, Asa's nephew, said Jan Morgan is wrong. Barker and Hendren used identical talking points. They said, A, the Tax Reform and Relief Task Force is a creation of the legislature, and B, the governor has no appointments on the task force. Now, on Friday, when I briefly covered this, one of the things that I said was, all right, well, let's just, for the sake of argument, say that the governor had no appointments on the task force. He certainly, and I said, okay, but he certainly controlled who didn't get on the task force. He might not have said who gets on, but he certainly said who's not getting on. Anyway, who is right? Who is right? Listen to this. The newspaper article sort of left it as she said, he said. But it doesn't have to be a she said, he said deal because the newspaper article left out important information about the task force. Barker and Hendren are correct in saying the governor has no appointments to the legislative task force. They are technically correct in saying it's a legislative creation, but they omit essential details showing Asa is the driving force behind the task force and its work. Here's a few bullet points. Let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them to be exact. Bullet point number 1. Governor Hutchinson is the one who proposed the legislative task force. Now, number 1 here may be the most conclusive of all. Governor Hutchinson is the one that actually proposed the task force. I mean, he proposed it, and then the legislature passed it. And now he wants to say, "Oh, I had nothing to do with it. I've got nothing to do with the task force." Well, it wouldn't exist had you not suggested it, sir. I wonder what Senator Hendren or Jamie Barker would say to that. It would not exist if it wasn't for him. Now, they would say, "Oh, yeah, you're right," but his leadership, his great leadership. He's been a Republican for decades. So how dare you question him? He's been a Republican forever, which means he must have been a conservative the entire time. Now, I love that as an excuse. It's I do think, and I'm a huge Ben Shapiro fan. I enjoy listening to him. But he always has a concept of arguing from a position of authority and how that's not a legitimate argument. And, yeah, he does do a good job of debunking every time. And I feel like that's what they attempt to do here when they defend Asa. Asa's been a Republican for decades, so that means he must be a conservative. And it's like, well, those two are not, you can't equate those two, because there are plenty of Republicans who haven't been conservative for a very, very, very long time. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway. I mean, the pivot of him pivoting to the right. I saw another post. I saw Asa Hutchinson on Twitter. He said he was celebrating the anniversary where he put on a flak jacket to go negotiate with those the army of the Lord or whatever. What is it? The hand of the sword of the. Well, I don't know what it's called, but anyway. All right, this goes on. Listen to this. This is just. It gets better. It gets better. So that's bullet point number 1. Governor Hutchinson is the one who proposed the legislative task force, period. Number 2, Governor Hutchinson announced what the scope of the task force would be. Number 3, Governor Hutchinson announced his plan for the task force on January 10th of 2017, and proof, his nephew filed the multi-page bill the next day. That's interesting. It's a multi-page bill. I wonder, you think they worked all night on it? Or do you think they already had it when he gave his little announcement ready to file? What do you think? Either one. Yeah, you're right. I'm just saying, like, it's ridiculous to think. Just like it's ridiculous to think that Jeremy Gillum and Jonathan Dismang wrote the letter to Asa requesting 2/3 support in order to call a special session. It's like, no, pretty sure that was Asa's idea, and you guys said, yes, Governor, we'll write the letter that you already wrote for us, and we'll sign our names and act like it came from us. I mean, political theater doesn't even begin to describe it. But a lot of people trying to circle the wagons. A lot of people trying to claim he's been a Republican for decades. So, of course, he's a conservative. And that's simply not necessarily true. Back in a minute.
All about getting Jan elected. And so we're in charge of the NEA section. So we had some billboards donated to us. It was our responsibility to put the vinyl up on them. Wonderful. So we began collecting donations for that. And a lot of the money came from people on the committee, people outside the committee, random people who love Jan, who was like, yes, I want to help. So you're talking about these are your genuine. I'm a college student. Do you think that I've got, just extra money laying around to be handing out? Right. No. I believe in Jan so much, and I understand it is so important to get her face on a billboard. And so these are your grassroots people donating as much as they possibly can to get her in office. I mean, that's all that it is. So we came together, we got it printed, we got them put up. I mean, that's it,
Yeah.
point blank, so we did.
Right.
It's democracy.
And so then,
competition.
and so where were you, or what, when you found out that the governor, what exactly happened as far as who did the governor call?
So, as I have heard, the governor called Mayor Perrin. And
the mayor of Jonesboro.
Yes.
Okay.
And mayor's like, well, I don't know. So he called a former mayor of Bono. And he was like, well, I don't know. So he called the owners of the billboards. And he was like, oh, man, what have I got myself into? And so,
the owner was? I bet the owner was kind of intimidated.
It's just like, oh, my gosh, the governor of Arkansas is demanding to know who put this billboard up. When, I mean, obviously, citizens of Jan Morgan did. Says it right there on the billboard. It's financial law. You got to put that on there.
Right.
And so, he called us and he was like, what do we do about this? And then so he eventually ended up telling them, it's really none of your business who put it up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I just feel like, wow. It's certainly a form of intimidation. Or at the very least, there's, if you're just in the billboard business and all of a sudden the governor's like, well, who, you would feel intimidated. You would feel, okay, here's somebody in power who is, giving me, basically interrogating me, trying to figure out who my customers are.
I say he should capitalize on it. Now he's got some publicity.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go. Sell it once we take our Jan ones down, of course. Sell it. Hey, this is the famous governor billboard.
Yeah.
Come get it.
Yeah, exactly. This is a great placement for your message.
Yes, thank you for the publicity.
Yeah. And maybe Conduit News will put a billboard up there.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
So more than anything, though, I'm flattered. I'm flattered that we have caught his attention.
Yeah.
And so, take it as it is.
Well, I appreciate you being so bold and saying that, and I know you took your college Republican hat off, and I appreciate that, but, it's so the hat still to the side.
Right.
Why are you supporting Jan Morgan? Why do you believe in her?
Okay, so I'll give you my I Stand with Jan spiel here. We'll start from the
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Sorry, it was for the dead air there. I think did I do that, Joe? I think I did. It's Friday. We'll figure it out. All right, so what I was gonna say was I just had this idea for a parody, and we're gonna make the Essence of Bureaucrat parody this week. We have it pretty firmly written. And so we're going to make that this week, but maybe another one about like if you've been like psychologically abused by Republican Party establishment officials. I think there needs to be like a helpline for you, to where you can actually vote if you've had your arm twisted, psychologically speaking, to not be able to vote your conscience because to not really be able to vote the will of your constituents and as a conservative. By the way, that's what this is, by the way. The fact that this program is doing what it's doing and reaching more and more people. You can almost hear the gasps from the Marble Palace establishment and all those who attend court there. They really, really are, because it's just a different narrative, and it can break the psychological hold inside that bubble of that this is the truth. They say this is the truth, this is the narrative, this is what we're doing, and quite frankly, this program offers a conservative alternative to the talking points that are there to protect the status quo and protect anybody who is getting something from government and enriching themselves with the taxpayer dime. So it's concentrated, benefits versus dispersed costs, which was what our whiteboard was last week. By the way, if you would like to just shoot me a text, what do you think the whiteboard should say this week? Or on Facebook, go ahead. What do you think the whiteboard should say this week? I'm just curious. There's no guarantee I'll use your phrase, but we'll have one up there by this time tomorrow. So let me know. You can send me a text, 870-275-9799, or you can sound off on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. We were just going over and correcting the record, fact-checking Senator Jim Hendren and the campaign spokesperson, Jamie Barker. We were fact-checking them because of this great piece over at conduit4action.org. I think right now we're, through bullet point number 3, and I think it's safe to say that the task force on taxes, it was Asa Hutchinson's brainchild. And to say anything otherwise, you would have to ignore, or you would have to tell me that the speech he gave, the joint session that speech he gave in 2017, where he proposed the Blue Ribbon Commission, didn't happen. It didn't happen. I don't have the audio on hand because I don't have my computer, but Joe, what I would like for you to do is, can you just scroll, go through, go over here to the next gen computer over here, and can you find the parody? It's the ASA News parody, where the ribbon, the multi-ribbon parody, because that actually has an audio. That's the audio of Asa. That's actually the audio of Asa saying that he's going to form the Blue Ribbon Commission, or the Blue Ribbon. I mean, if he hadn't have said those words, okay, if he hadn't have said that, there wouldn't have been a task force. So, okay, if you have it, you can hit play there, but you're going to have to put it out of Program B down here. Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. All right, yeah, so listen to this, beginning of this parody real quick. Listen.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a Blue Ribbon Task Force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a Blue Ribbon Legislative Task Force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Stop. All right, so that right there, that's the basis of that parody. It's really, really funny if you ever want to check it out. But for him to say, and for Jim Hendren to say, and for others to say that this was not his brainchild when it was his idea, and you just heard it right there. January 11th, 2017, he gave a speech to shut down other conservative ideas that wanted to actually reform taxes in the 2017 session. It's funny when we have you on record, and now you're trying to distance yourself. Now, why is Asa and why is the nephew number one, why are they trying to distance Asa from the task force? Well, because they're considering ending tax exemptions. And if you end a tax exemption, that is a tax increase. And Asa has an opponent in a primary. And that primary opponent is Jan Morgan, and she is traveling the state telling people that Asa isn't a conservative. And so, conservatives don't raise your taxes. Just thought I'd let you know that. I don't know if you know that. I think most of us do. I'm talking to the people at the Marble Palace listening. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bullet point number 4. Back to the article, Conduit for Action, fact-checking this ridiculousness. It is almost certain the Hutchinson administration wrote the task force legislation to guide the study and to control who would be on the task force. Because when he announced that, what you just heard on January 11th, 2017, when he announced that, they filed, Jim Hendren, nephew number one, filed the bill to form the task force the next day. Just as Asa did on another legislative task force, the Health Reform Legislative Task Force 2 years earlier. Yeah, that was all his brain. That was his brainchild too. The Health Reform Task Force was also supposed to be seen as a legislative creation, but as we will explain later in this article, a goof-up by the Hutchinson administration showed the legislation was actually written by the Hutchinson administration. Now that's interesting. There would have been no need to create a legislative task force if Asa hadn't been trying to control who would be involved in the tax study and advance his agenda. Tax issues are already assigned by the legislature to the House and Senate Committees on Revenue and Tax. These committees normally meet together between legislative sessions, and their combined membership is larger than the membership of the task force. Despite bad ideas for taxpayers coming out of the task force, Asa has failed to criticize the task force, which I guess we could look for him to criticize raising the grocery tax in the coming days. Maybe he'll have a big, I I don't know, maybe he'll have a big press conference, pomp, circumstance. Maybe he'll get some federal official down here to actually claim a success when it's really a failure. The article goes on. Asa has a primary election. Voters in the Republican primary don't tend to like taxes. So, in his campaign, Asa is taking credit for tax cuts while remaining silent on the tax increases he got passed or tried to pass. Meanwhile, Asa's employee and Asa's nephew want you to think Asa has nothing to do with the task farce and the possibility of the grocery tax being increased. Politically, Asa's strategy of avoiding blame for the task farce is good, as long as you are a person who doesn't mind misleading the public. The newspaper article talked about whether Governor Hutchinson is to blame for the task force recommendations, but the issue is much larger than who gets the blame during a political primary. If you don't want to give the government more of your money when you buy groceries, you need to tell your legislator now. Not later, but now. We are not just talking about complaining to the hand-picked members of the task force. Every legislator needs to know you don't want your grocery taxes increased. And that is beyond, like this article says, that's beyond the Republican primary and the implications there. Let's just talk about your tax burden or the tax burden on the people. And I don't want to pay any more money for my groceries than I'm already paying. We wanted to give some more detail, Conduit for Action writes, and add additional comments on some of the points we made, but since it would have detracted from the flow of the article, we have reserved them to here. Okay, so that kind of ends part one of the article. Here's kind of part two. Number one, the task force was proposed by Asa, and its guidelines were set by Asa. It's undeniable that Asa came up with the idea for creating a legislative task force and set the guidelines on the study. Let's stop right there. That's the only way Asa knows how to govern, is to whittle away legislators, the full body of legislators that he can't control as well or as easily as he can control a select group of legislators on a task force that meets not during session when the full body has constitutional authority, but that meets outside of session where Asa can control things. That's the whole point. And he controls things by, his nephews or loyalists or whatever, but, it's still him controlling the legislature. There have been we've had them on the program, long-time political activists and good people who are trying to limit government for a long time have said they have not seen a governor with this much control over the legislators since Bill Clinton was here. And it makes you wonder where Asa learned all of this. So it's undeniable that it's Asa's idea. Now, again, he's now trying to say, that it's not his idea, or the campaign is trying to say it's not his idea. It was his idea. They're just upset that they're talking about tax increases, right? Asa wanted credit and publicly announced his plan. His proposal to create a legislative task force was in part an effort to placate some Republican legislators who wanted to propose more income tax cuts back in 2017, and his proposal furthered his goal of supporting his idea to shift state taxes among taxpayers while taking credit for lowering taxes of the winners. Here's part of the announcement, by the way. He sent out in an email. The goals of the legislative task force will be fairness, competition, simplification, and economic growth. That doesn't say anything about reducing the burden, does it? It's about fairness, competition, simplification, and economic growth. That doesn't say anything about giving the government less money than they're taking from us now, does it? Quote, we need to have a plan to reduce the tax rate over time to a more competitive level. Let's create that task force, and I ask for your support, he said in a 17-minute speech. By the way, taxpayers should take note that Asa didn't include the one thing Arkansas taxpayers want, a lower overall tax burden. The legislation creating the task force doesn't include it either. Surprise. Instead, the legislation sticks to ACE's script. The omission is significant because Arkansas's number one tax problem is that it is a high-tax state and borders states with lower tax burdens. Number two, since it's ACE's idea, it is extremely likely his administration wrote the legislation to guide the study and to control who would be on the task force. First, ACE's announcement of his plan was followed quickly by the filing of his nephew's multi-page bill the following day. More importantly, this would not be the first time ACE used the charade of a legislative task force being a legislative creation and not his. ACE did exactly that in 2015 on a previous legislative task force. Again, the only way he really knows how to govern. He works with the legislature as long as he gets to appoint who's a real legislature when the legislature is not in session. It was the Health Reform Legislative Task Force. We only know the Health Reform Legislative Task Force was ACE's creation because of a mistake made by the Hutchinson administration. John Seelig, who at the time was Hutchinson's Director of Department of Human Services, failed to remove his name and the name of a DHS employee from the draft bill sent to Senator Jim Hendren. Senator Hendren claimed the bill as his, but the Word document he sent to legislators included the author names and the date and the time when they edited the document. Which is why, ladies and gentlemen, really just it leads... Or I guess lends credibility to why it was never a conservative bill in the first place. And the second conservatives looked at it, we knew that Jim Hendren was trying to mislead, at the very least, limited government conservatives by saying this is him. And they had a poster child for somebody who had been trustworthy in the past. You heard Gene McVeigh on the program last week, and he said before Jim Hendren was radicalized. Yeah, I think that's, because that's what he said. He said, I know how to get things done. I'm a conservative. You can trust me. And a lot of legislators did trust him. But again, our phone has not, is our phone on? We haven't gotten a phone call yet that Medicaid expansion has ended like Jim Hendren said Medicaid expansion would end. We haven't been, somebody called, maybe I'm wrong, somebody call me if Medicaid expansion has ended, like Jim Hendren said it would in 2015 if we just followed his leadership. Has Medicaid expansion ended? Moving on. Note, Senator Hendren has been Uncle Asa's number one tool in fronting Asa's agenda. In return, Asa helped transfer Jim from the Missouri Air Guard to the Arkansas Air Guard. Wonder why Asa swore in his colonel nephew without the press being present. Conduit Fraction writes, let's watch and see if Hendren also gets promoted to general after the elections. Of course, they will claim Asa has nothing to do with it, and it's purely the decision of the adjutant general, Asa's appointee. Oh, by the way, with the transfer to the Arkansas Guard, Senator Hendren now ultimately reports to his uncle. Again, that actually leads further validity to what I've been saying, is that now that we have families controlling the executive and legislative branch, the Arkansas Senate is really now nothing more than a state agency and not an independent legislative body. That's what happens when you have relatives. As the, it'll be one thing if you had a relative working for you in your own executive branch, that would still be questionable. But to basically blur the separation of powers like we are, it just makes people, makes me uncomfortable. It doesn't make enough people at the Marble Palace uncomfortable. They still think they have autonomy and that everything's fine. I guess it's because you have an R next to your name. Everybody's in the family anyway, right? Number 3, if the governor hadn't been trying to control who would be involved in the tax study, there would not have been any reason to create a task force. The subject matter is already covered by existing legislative committees, and the committees have broader representation than the task force. The issues should have been assigned to the House and Senate committees on revenue and tax. Between legislative sessions, the House and Senate committees normally meet jointly and have combined membership larger than the task force. And so why not just use the standing committees? It's a really good question. Here's the question. Do you really think it's just a coincidence that the membership of the task force is primarily made up of legislators who supported Governor Hutchinson by voting yes on several bills to raise taxes? That's just a coincidence. Number 4, Asa has not criticized the task force for looking for places like groceries to get tax money from you, the people. This speaks volumes. The silent governor, silent on increasing the taxes on your groceries. Yet this is no surprise from candidate Asa, who talks big about tax cuts while remaining silent on tax increases he has proposed. The Arkansas Democrat-Gazette article raises the question of who is responsible for the direction of the task force and its consideration of raising the tax on your groceries. Ultimately, the tax farce is Asa's baby and is run under the watchful eye of the task farce sponsor and chair, Asa's colonel nephew, Senator Jim Hendren. This is much bigger. This is a much bigger question than whether Asa is to blame for the focus of the task farce. The question is, are you going to stay silent while the task farce looks at increasing the tax you pay on groceries? And that's really the key here, is the people. Do we need tax relief? Yes. Are we going to get it? I hope so. Love to eat crow. I don't think so. I think it's going to get more. I think they're going to end up with more money going to the government. That's kind of what I'm thinking. More money to the government. So to set the record straight, the tax farce on taxes is and was, always has been, Governor Asa Hutchinson's brainchild. Back in just a moment.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's TripleRPawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, TripleRPawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Every business needs great people, and the better way to
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So there's a interesting dispute between, and it's kind of just like a legal battle. And on Friday, I saw this when I got off air on Friday, that the Arkansas Supreme Court has rejected. I'm not a lawyer. Is it a motion? Is that what it is? Asking them to essentially clip the wings of prosecuting attorney in the 2nd Judicial District, Scott Ellington. You see, essentially, you have Leslie Rutledge, the Attorney General, wanting to sue opioid manufacturers. And it's a lawsuit filed last month, Pulaski County, against the 3 opioid manufacturers that blame the companies for fueling the opioid epidemic in Arkansas, where there are more painkiller prescriptions than people. Now, what's interesting there is, just on a different note, like, again, I kind of touched on this. We have a lot of doctors that were told that this medicine was perfectly fine, and it needed to be given out. Now, you have a lot of doctors that also, and some of them have been prosecuted, for, doing too many prescriptions. But I'm talking about, this has been a problem building for 30 years, or, well, maybe not that long, but for a long time. Crittenden County, here's the thing. There's another lawsuit that was filed 10 days earlier in Crittenden County by prosecuting attorney Scott Ellington, representing the state and a coalition of 87 cities and counties. The suit targets opioid makers as well as distributors and retailers for their part in the public health crisis. It was an emergency petition, writ of, I don't know, mandamus? Is that how you say that? Mandamus? Legal words are so weird. That's why some lawyers kind of, you get lawyers and politicians together, and that's why so many lawyers are politicians. They already think that they're like, did you file a writ of mandamus? All right. So Rutledge argued that she was the state's chief law officer and that Ellington didn't have authority to represent Arkansas in the litigation. So, again, Scott Ellington, the prosecutor for the 2nd Judicial District, also ran as a Democrat a couple of cycles ago, tried to unseat Rick Crawford. He ran a very, very, very unsuccessful campaign. I would say this is just an interesting thing here where, of course, the Supreme Court said that Ellington can continue to represent. The Attorney General's office says, they were like, well, we want to represent the state in this. Here's KFSM 5 News Online. Arkansas court won't pull prosecutor from opioid lawsuit. Here's the thing. The court did not elaborate on its reason for denying the request. It's just a one-page order. They didn't really justify it. They just said, Anyway. We'll continue to follow it. And here's the thing. I got a feeling the Attorney General's office still supports fully the city's county's lawsuit, by the way, because of the goal of holding, trying to do something about this opioid crisis. I think it just comes down to, who has the authority to represent state of Arkansas in matters like this. And typically that is reserved for the Attorney General, not a second, judicial district prosecutor. Anyway, one more hour coming your way next.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Beginning. So a little over a year ago, I started volunteering for a conservative economic group, Americans for Prosperity. I'm sure we're all familiar with it.
Yes.
Okay, so it was at that time, I'll be honest, I didn't pay attention to Arkansas politics. Just Arkansas, Republican state, that's all I knew. So anyways, when I get in there and I start volunteering for this organization, every single day I am making calls to bat down tax increases that are coming from our governor. And so then I start realizing, oh, the governor does this. oh, the governor's that. It called it very, very quickly. I realized, who the heck is this guy? How dare he call himself a Republican? Why is he in office? So from the get-go, you've got to understand, this took me a couple weeks to understand.
Yeah.
It didn't take, rocket science to get this.
Well, Republicans stand for certain things.
Well, exactly.
And these are the opposite of the
I
policy.
always like to say, I'm a Christian first, a conservative second, a Republican third.
Yeah.
So, conservative comes among this. And so I'm a conservative. I'm sitting here like, this is not conservative. What is going on? And so it very, very quickly, I was anybody but Asa. Very quickly. And so there were even things that were going on, and I was like, should I be a part of these things because it's dealing with the governor? I don't want to look like I'm supporting the governor, but at the same time, I can't let his failures as a Republican stop me from networking and making connections and understand how this world works. I actually had to go to, I didn't have to go. I went to a fundraiser of his just as like a volunteer. We get hit up to be volunteers often, and so I cried because I so desperately did not want to support this man, but I also was not going to let him stop me from networking and seeing how this world works and making connections with these people. So anyways, fast forward a little bit. There's always talk here and there, somebody going to primary him, and then, all our hopefuls were like, not yet.
Yeah, Tim Griffin was
we thought TG was going to primary him.
Yeah, a lot of people thought he
was. And it didn't happen, and that was fine, and I didn't expect anybody to primary him. And then all of a sudden, Jane Morgan pops up, and I had never heard of her. And I was like, well, this is interesting. And so I knew from that moment, all right, this is going to be my girl. Like, this is who I'm going to support.
Right.
But he, at the same time, didn't know anything about her. So fast forward, and she is to meet with the college Republicans before she met with the Craighead County Republican Committee. We were supposed to have a meeting with her. And that day, I was just, tired, run down. I was like, oh, gosh, I got to go meet this lady, like, blah, blah. Well, then, so it ended up, we had a very unique experience where we got to sit down with her, and not many of us came, so it got to be a very intimate setting, sit down at across the table and got to speak with her about all these issues and things. I mean, from that moment, I called my family and I said, look, she's the real deal. I will move a mountain for her. She is everything I hope to be if I ever find myself in her position, because she is a woman, unintimidated, unafraid, who is conservative, who refused to stand down for what she believes in.
Wow.
Because just I myself, I get so passionate about these topics, and I understand not everybody's like it, but I am. And so I've been gifted with the passion and just like the knowledge of these things. I feel it's hypocrisy for me to not stand up for these things I believe in, for me to complain about all these things and not do anything about it. I feel it's hypocritical in and of myself. And so I feel called when I'm so passionate about these things to do something about it. And so here's my way to do it. And Jan is the same thing. She feels so passionate about these things, and she's so distraught about things that are going on in our state that no one else would step up. So she did. And so I commend her for that. And I hope that's everything I am one day, that if I see something going on, I'll stand up for it.
Wow. Wow.
So I'm all in for Jan. I'll move a mountain for her. I'll do anything for her. She's the best thing that could possibly happen to this state.
That's so interesting. I mean, I so admire, your commitment and your passion. I mean, it's so great to see that that it is being a senior in college and being so involved but being able to recognize, hey, we do need to have we need to have a government that more represents like the conservative philosophy, and I think that's what you're seeing. Gosh, so you were in. Okay, I know what you say, 5 minutes. Okay, so you were watching all this from afar, and how have you been? What have you been doing now? Like when you talk to other Republicans, because there are some, and I would even say, Hannah, honestly, I think this interview that you're doing right now is going to make a lot of waves because you are so articulate and passionate, and I would imagine the establishment is very worried to hear someone as young and educated as you are, coming out against the establishment, because that's really, Jan is very anti-establishment. So, but what's going on now, like right now, in terms of what are you feeling when you talk to other Republicans about this particular primary? Because
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan will be on the program, so you don't want to miss that. It's always great to have him on. Gosh, welcome to the program. Happy Monday. Thanks so much for being with us today. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine here, and we want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call us or text us, 870-275-9799, or you can sound off on Facebook Live, facebook.com/Conduit News. So, had a good first hour. Check it out if you missed it. We really, I feel like, debunked this concept that the governor's now trying to run from his record when it comes to the task force that's considering ending a lot of tax exemptions, like the grocery tax. And this was his brainchild. Asa Hutchinson's brainchild was the task force, and to try to suggest otherwise now that he has a primary opponent is just it's ridiculous. It's insulting. There are many things that the governor's doing right now that just do not seem like that they're operating from a position of confidence. That's not contrived. You know what I'm saying? That's not contrived. I feel like that's objective. I mean, I just don't think, especially what I know that's going on behind the scenes, that I can't really say, that people tell me. It just, something strange is afoot. It could just be it could just be, demanding or just really being uncomfortable with the fact that there are people who disagree with you. And that could just kind of be like a nagging little itch that's got to be scratched. And so you start to, interrogate billboard owners and things like that. I mean, that's all it could be. It could just be kind of be like a psychological thing, just like I have to be right. And maybe that's all it is. You see, I'm trying to be rational here. But then again, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's some internal polling that they are uncomfortable with. Oh, I'm not talking about the one that they've let you see, Marble Palace Insider, to make you think everything's fine. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about maybe some others. That's all I'm talking about. So, anyway. All right. Cynthia Howell has a piece about the Walton effort to offer charter school loans. So cue superintendents everywhere. Start to panic, everyone. Education as we know it is changing. They're coming after your public schools. They're coming after your funding. And everyone will be destitute in the end. And because everything, why would they do this to us? Everything is working swimmingly. The public education system has never been better. It's accomplishing all of the goals it sets out to. And every single day justifies the massive amount of taxpayer money it takes to fund these operations. Operators of open enrollment charter schools in Arkansas and across the country are getting easier, more affordable access to loans to buy or build school buildings. Again, be very terrified. The Walton Family Foundation plans to announce today that it's leading an initiative to infuse $300 million into 2 new loan funds. The nonprofit funds, one for long-term mortgage-like loans and the other for short-term loans of up to 5 years, are backed by the Walton Family Foundation of Bentonville through its already existing Building Equity Initiative, and in this case, of the short-term loan fund in partnership with Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Quote, big challenges require bold solutions, Alice Walton, a Walton Family Foundation board member, said in a prepared statement announcing the new Charter Impact Fund and the Facilities Investment Fund. Applications from charter schools will be solicited starting as soon as this week. Goes on, quote, this effort will allow resources that were spent on facilities to be directed back into the classrooms, back to the teachers, and back to where it should be with students. Again, can you believe what they're doing to our public schools, I tell you? That's what you'll hear. You know, this story reminded me this morning how much Arkansas desperately needs school choice, and how we were this close last year with State Representative Jim Dotson's bill of getting it. Like making a baby step towards it, not getting it, making a small baby step. It would have just allowed for private corporations to donate to 501 or 501c3s. And then the state would then, through a lottery process, you know, it could go back to, parents would be able to use the funds to, enroll in a private school or enroll in a charter school or whatever. You know, I mean, it was extremely basic, and yet the superintendents, some of them, and later on admitted the fact, according to who I've talked to, they actually were disseminating inaccurate information about what the bill was going to do. Consequently, you had a whole lot of teachers that had inaccurate information. I want you to understand something. Teachers, you guys are great. You're not part of the problem, but you've got to understand there's a huge divide between administrators and teachers, not just in pay scale, but in priorities. And many of them are probably voting for Democrats. Not all, but many of them probably are. And I think a lot of the teachers in Arkansas are not. So you really need to look into school choice and this concept that we've got education figured out and that competition and diversity of ideas is a bad thing. I mean, if you're on that side, if you're on the side that competition and diversity, in our education process is a bad thing, or that competition and diversity can only happen within the existing apparatus of property tax to fund schools and everything else, then I think you're really short-sighted, and I think maybe you're trying to protect your responsibility of managing multi-million-dollar school district budgets in administration as a member of the administration, But these charter schools are a good idea. They can help low-income, maybe socially disadvantaged people get a better quality education. They also give parents a choice, and that's what this is about, is that the kids, contrary to what MSNBC thinks, that the kids do not belong to the state. They belong to the parents, and the parents should be able to, to find a good educational source for their kids, like you go, shopping at a grocery store. There should be a variety. That's the goal here. And the concept is if there's a variety, there's going to be more competition. And stupid ideas that don't work and waste money will be, thrown away in the dustbin of history, and it's going to make everything better, okay? In a lot of ways, you just got to think about it like this. And this is a very simple example, but you have Apple and you have Android, and you have these two operating systems. They're the basic ones now, and you have one that's always trying to one-up the other. Are you telling me that makes them worse? Are you telling me that makes them less efficient? Now, sometimes I personally think I think the Apple iPhone, when they got rid of the headphone jack, was a stupid idea. Did they put a headphone jack in the iPhone 10? I don't know. Did they? They still didn't. So they're sticking with it. They're doubling down. Okay, well, maybe eventually that's maybe it's not time to give up on that idea yet. But you know what I'm saying? I have a choice, even though I have an iPhone, but I have an old one that has a headphone jack. You know what I'm saying? Our education system should be more like that. Give more choice. So on that, as I was reading over this and figuring out how desperately we do need school choice here in Arkansas and that we don't have it, and considering that it's a part of the Republican Party platform and it's another failure from when we have these massive Republican majorities last year and a Republican governor, and we can't get something so basic as like the beginning of school choice here in Arkansas, I started thinking to myself, well, what else did they just completely fail on? Well, what's a huge issue right now? Donald Trump is sending troops to the border. Donald Trump is sending troops to the border. Texas National Guard's going to get there. I actually am very optimistic. I think he signed a memo ending catch and release. Did you hear about this? Where Donald Trump is essentially saying, like, we can't do the catch and release anymore. It's going to be a big deal, and I think it's going to make a huge impact. And I think that I think Donald Trump's approval rating is going to continue to go up for this one reason, and I think he is going to use military funds to build the wall. I think he's going to do all of that. I've got a flashback headline, though. I think Ronald Reagan had the air traffic controller strikes, and I think Donald Trump is going to have the sanctuary cities. I think that Donald Trump's going to have the sanctuary cities problem. Here's a flashback. You want to talk about not passing school choice, a key Republican Party plank in the platform? What about not passing a sanctuary campus law? Yeah, that went down in flames. And listen to this. This was a headline from the Washington Times by Andrew DeMillo with the AP. Arkansas breaks from other red states on sanctuary campuses. And this is back on February 7th of last year, 2017, how the House Education Committee rejected the proposal by voice vote, which would have essentially allowed the state would say, look, if you receive state funds, you have to cooperate and comply with federal laws. You cannot offer sanctuary to immigrants on your campus, right? And this failed. This was a policy by a bill proposed by State Representative Brant Smith, and after it failed, the room was packed full of immigration activists, or I guess we would say illegal immigration activists. And when it failed, there were cheers in the committee room. Now, this is the excuse, was that none of Arkansas's campuses have adopted any policies refusing to cooperate with immigration authorities, but Smith said the bill was needed to discourage any efforts to do so, right? Quote, we need to help our administrators, our presidents of these colleges and universities, as well as our chancellors, so they can actually push back and say we will not be encouraged to break federal laws. Wow, that's pretty common sense. Look at what's going on right now. I mean, just think about this. It's one more example that our brand of republicanism here in Arkansas doesn't really fly other places, and yet they want you to believe that Arkansas is some sort of bastion of conservatism. Listen to how Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson is quoted. A former federal Homeland Security official who oversaw border security efforts told reporters earlier Tuesday he was concerned about the impact Smith's bill would have on some college students. This is our governor. This is what he said about not giving money, state money, to colleges that set up sanctuary campuses, if that were to happen. Asa Hutchinson said this, quote, they're paying tuition, out-of-state tuition, I believe, and they are getting their education, and while they are doing that, we don't want to create a climate of fear for them. This is what Asa Hutchinson said about illegal immigration. Now, listen to the first part of that. They're paying tuition, out-of-state tuition. Now, that means it's more money going to the state, doesn't it? More of these guaranteed college loans going to the state. You think he heard that from a college administrator? I bet you he did. Yeah, we'd take a huge hit to the budget if we had to do this. They're paying tuition, out-of-state tuition, I believe, and they are getting their education. And while they're doing that, we don't want to create a climate of fear for them. Again, this was last year when Donald Trump, was under fire constantly from the press, and this is Asa Hutchinson's statement on that. Boy, something tells me because Ace has got a primary opponent, he may try to pivot to the right on border security. What do you think? If they need the Arkansas National Guard, do you think that Asa will make a big ado and have a federal official down here and talk about how I'm cooperating with the Trump administration because I agree with what he's doing? I mean, I predict that he will do something like that because he is pivoting really, really far to the right, trying to defeat Jan Morgan in the upcoming May primary. But I just wanted to kind of preemptively see. I'm not afraid to do something before it's a problem. I'm not afraid to point out something and be left of bang. I'm just telling you, it'll be kind of hypocritical if he does something like that, considering his stance on sanctuary campuses, which was a very innocent bill. There was a lot of protesters there, but that's part of the problem with the right is that we don't really protest. We don't show up, right? We're all, doing stuff, I guess. And yet the presence there, I mean, look, the pharmacists got what they wanted because they showed up en masse and said, we demand to have these PBMs regulated. We need to take note of that, folks. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a blue ribbon task force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a blue ribbon legislative task force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who is deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Rights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. P.C. Rights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fab Eulis. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so the concept of being left of bang is something that's been talked about in this program by Colonel Paul Deckert from the Center for Security Policy. It's the idea that you don't wait for something to happen and then react, that you react and anticipate an event, okay? It's a military term, I think, for the most part. But it can also be applied legislatively. So when the governor didn't want to sign the Sharia law bill or the anti-Sharia law bill, and he didn't sign it, it became law anyway, but he was opposed to it. When the governor didn't want to support, and this did not pass, the sanctuary campus bill, and he said they're paying tuition, out-of-state tuition. I believe they are getting their education, and while they are doing that, we don't want to create a climate of fear for them, referring to illegal immigrants. He's essentially saying, we don't want to be proactive here. And at the same time, when this bill failed, they were saying, look, there are no sanctuary campuses on Arkansas campuses, the U of A or Arkansas State. There are no sanctuary campuses. And now keep in mind, this was in February of last year. Here in my hands, I have a statement from Arkansas State University that's dated September of 2017. And it quotes, who is this here? Let's see, State University Chancellor Kelly Damphouse. Quote, today's news about President Trump's decision to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals policy is not a surprise to the leadership of Arkansas State University. In the days leading up to the announcement, we have reached out to our A-State DACA students to reassure them that we include them in the concept that every Red Wolf counts. And so you have that statement here, which actually kind of sounds like, look, and we know that the DACA situation is, well, first of all, Donald Trump wanted to fix the DACA situation. Donald Trump gave the Democrats everything they wanted, and the Democrats said, no, we'd rather the DACA kids still be victims. We'd rather them still be victims because they're more of a benefit to us as political tools than they are to actually solve and help the problem because we're afraid who may get the credit. It really exposed the Democrats as just being complete frauds when it comes to their forced altruism. They try to project on everybody else, and they're the compassionate ones. No, you're not the compassionate ones. Not at all. But anyway, if you really contrast this, it clearly is an issue. And it clearly is becoming more of an issue today. So you look at February of last year, this bill failing, Asa Hutchinson not supporting it. You look at what happened in September with the DACA announcement, what universities did, and now look at where we are today in 2018. With Donald Trump sending troops to the border, we have caravans of folks from Mexico or Central and South America that are coming in, or trying to come in rather. They're being disbanded, I think, is what's happened. But I think they're being disbanded because of the forceful reaction from President Trump. I would just say this. If you're a college student and you're listening to this program, you're probably pretty conservative. I would make sure you register to vote. I think you still have time if you register now. I think, double check me on this, Joe, I think you could still vote in the primary. Can we get we need to know that, actually, before I just, we're going to confirm or deny that by the time we come back. Don't go anywhere. It's interesting that, I'll let you answer, but it's interesting that you have this intimidation tactics over just a billboard. when Asa has $3 million and Jan has nowhere near that much money. So what's the dynamic here?
So I'll be honest, a lot of times people just don't keep up with Arkansas politics in general. And so a lot of times you're like, oh, have you heard of Jan Morgan, the governor's race? They're like, what? The governor's being primaried? And that's nothing to do with Jan Morgan. That's to do with people not keeping up with politics. And then there's some people that I know are conservatives who are like, oh, yeah, I've heard of her. Like, I want to know more about her. Like, you know, can you tell me more? Can we hear more? Or then there's the other side of it. I mean, just yesterday, my mom was talking to a lady, and she was asking her about something, and she was so concerned that she was going to be like, oh, like, she's the motorcycle lady. Mm-hmm. And she was so concerned that was going to be her response. But actually, the girl said, oh, my goodness, is she the girl that owns the gun range in Hot Springs? Mom's like, yes. She said, my grandpa loves her to death. If he could just meet her, his whole life would be complete. So, I mean, yesterday, my mom, seriously, she called me. She said, Hannah, I had so many interactions with people who were just loved Jan. She said they loved her, and they just want to know so much more about her. And so more and more and more I'm being met with that. And more we're being met with people who support Jan. But they're not going to come out and say it just yet. They're
That's
not
kind of the
gonna...
Trump situation, too. No one.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, they're just, and that's fine. If you want to keep it to yourself, as long as you go vote on May 22nd, I don't care how loud and proud you are.
Yeah, it's like, keep it to yourself, or, who knows, your business may be targeted with the Spanish Inquisition.
So tables are turning. If you know anything about Arkansas politics, if you keep up with it, and you're a true conservative. So here's my thing about this whole situation. If you are a conservative, if you claim to be a conservative, and you are not voting for Jan Morgan, one, you either do not know your information, or two, you're not a conservative. So you need to either reevaluate where you stand politically, or you need to do your research.
Yeah. The last question, though, before we got to go, we're talking with Hannah Webb. He has moderated a lot of his positions during this primary season. Now he's saying that we're going to cut taxes more. Now he's also saying we are, he's talking about bathroom bill legislation, or saying he stood up to Obama's bathroom rules. And then, of course, he's now going to reduce government by 50%, which that's not really going to happen.
Of course he is. I mean,
but is that not interesting? If anything, Jan Morgan has won in terms of making Asa acknowledge that the base, that he has governed different from the policies in the platform.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
So either way, we hope to have a victory. If she doesn't win and he does what he says during election season, wonderful.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
We got what we want.
Yeah, that's true. If he actually were to govern the way he's now representing himself, it would be nice.
It's not about the person; it's about the policy.
Yes.
And so, thank you, Jan, for the policy.
Yeah, Hannah Webb, thanks so much for being with us, and good luck to the golf tournament this weekend with the Arkansas State University College.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us today. Hey, here joining us live in studio, we got State Representative Dan Sullivan. Dan, welcome back, sir.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, everybody. Great to be here.
Yes. Sorry, I had you muted there for a second. Okay, so Dan, let's just talk a little bit about. I mean, I know you are running for re-election, so first of all, congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. Out there knocking doors and met some great people. I met Command Sergeant Major James Cameron, who is a big fan of the show.
Oh, wow.
And the commander, Sergeant Major, works with Veterans Helping Veterans. And I hope he's listening again, and just want to plug that organization, all the great work they do in our community, helping our injured vets and other vets. And I think he'd be a great interview. He was a little hesitant to come on, but I think if you prodded him, he may come on and join you.
I would love that. I always love to get interviews with our military veterans.
Yeah, well, I've been
really, because they're so much braver than I am. You know what I mean? I can't get over that.
Well, you face your own enemy, I think.
Yeah.
Again, I've been out knocking doors and visiting with people and sharing my voting record with them. My slogan, if you see my signs that are out there, says, "From God to us, life and liberty." Mm-hmm. And I chose that slogan because it has a lot of meaning to me. And first of all, the life side of that, that's part of our founding fathers. That, by the way, that statement came from Thomas Jefferson. He's the one that made that. And the life side of this, my voting record on life has been one of the strongest in the legislature. You know, for many of those groups that are down there in the family council, there were only 8 of 100 had a better voting record than I for them.
Yep.
Americans for Prosperity and only I think 8 had a higher voting record than I. The Arkansas Project, Dan Greenberg's.
Yeah, what do they call that? The AAI scorecard or something.
Yeah, they have a one, and I was one of the, I think, 8th or 9th on theirs also.
Yeah.
Number 1 with Conduit. So I've got a very strong conservative voting record. A little bit surprised I have a Republican as an opponent, but we'll get back to that later.
Yeah.
But a strong voting record on the life issue. You know, our legislature has worked together to have one of the strongest pro-life stances and laws in the nation. We even passed legislation that would be challenged to force the challenge so that we could set the standard for what right to life legislation looks like. The same thing for religious freedom. Although I think we had an opportunity to maybe to make it a little stronger, we still have one of the best religious freedom bills in the nation. So my record on religious freedom is really strong, and I've worked together with others to do that.
Yeah.
Also, from God to us, life and liberty. The liberty side, I think, is where I've run a few people, angered them or upset them on my liberty side. I brought a statement here. I think this was a Benjamin Franklin statement. It says, "I predict the future happy of Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them."
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And, that's happened big time in healthcare. And I heard the show earlier, you talking about education. And I know our teachers deserve more money and more pay, and public education is a critical part. It's part of our Constitution. I'm a constitutional conservative. Strong pro-education. And I know our teachers get upset that we don't have enough money into education, but our money's being funneled into healthcare. You've gone through and listed how many tens and hundreds of millions of dollars are going to healthcare. You've talked about bringing in companies from China into my district, District 53 in northeast corner of Craighead County. We're bringing in a Chinese company and giving them tax breaks. That's money that should be going into education. And unfortunately, I don't hear the teachers speaking up against those kinds of things that take money out of education. And I think it's just I hope to educate our teachers about that because I think all of us support education.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to say that you don't support education, that is kind of a leftist tactic. That if you're for like new ideas or maybe different ideas, that you automatically, it seems you can get painted with this concept that you must not like education, and I think that assumes that the way we're doing things now is the best that it can be.
Yeah, and matter of fact, I'm on the Career Education Committee, and we sit around with business people around the table and talk about ideas and what we can do. We had the director of career education for Arkansas and higher education we're talking, and we're talking about all these different things we need to do to help fund career education. And I've already talked to the folks from Nucor Steel, a great group of folks who donate lots of money, just freely donate it. And I'd talk with them and said, look, guys, if we gave you a tax break, would you be willing to invest a part of that in career education? They said, absolutely. It's exactly what Trump did. Trump went to the companies over in Europe and said, hey, guys, will you bring your money back and will you bring the jobs back if we give you a tax break? And the left said, oh, a terrible idea. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. Well, guess what? Overwhelming success. So I proposed and raised my hand, asked a question, and said, look, Director, don't you think we need to give our business a tax break because the people sitting around this table would gladly donate to that. It's their jobs. It makes their job easier if we would reduce their taxes. And of course, all the business people are going, yeah, we'll work on that. And I said, ask the director, and the director said, well, that's for a different task force. I think you were talking about that
Yeah,
task force today.
Yeah, we love our tax forces.
Yeah,
we love
that's
it.
the tax task force.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard that even discussed as an idea to fund career education.
You have a lot of great ideas concerning saving taxpayer money. I mean, I know you certainly. I mean, we've talked about it before, and I know you've talked about it with your colleagues. And a lot of times, when you start looking at efficiencies, and it means less taxpayer money going to this or that, it makes people who kind of survive and get their livelihoods off of a big government a little nervous. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we've heard this term being talked about, the economic elites taking over government. That's exactly what's going on in District 53 in my race. My opponent, Cole Peck, is a doctor, and the people that are funding him are essentially the economic elites of Northeast Arkansas and Jonesboro.
Now, so there's a lot of healthcare interests there, and you ran a bill that would have really brought Arkansas in line with nurse practitioners in other states in scope of practice, right? And that's what this is really about,
yeah,
right?
As a matter of fact, Nucor tried to open up a clinic to take care of all of their employees and their families for free. Now, think about that. All their families for free. They have them all over the United States.
Nucor's outside of Arkansas, Nucor plants do this already.
Do this all over the United States, yes. And they were not allowed to open one in the state of Arkansas. The medical board stopped it. Of course, also, we ran telehealth legislation that would have allowed people to pick up their phone and call their doctor. And the medical society killed that. Now, we did the next session, they opened it up a little bit, but they killed that because they want that money for the office visit. And if you can pick it up and talk to your doctor over the phone, I think it was a $40 call. And many businesses whose employees use that waive the copay because it's so much cheaper than going into the doctor's office. But our medical society killed that. Now, I'm not trying to get on our doctors because I love our doctors and appreciate them. It's the corporate medical side of this. That's where the money goes.
Yes.
And they are very protective.
Well, it's kind of like education in a way. It's like it's not it's not the teachers. There's a separation between the administration and education and the teachers, and these administrators who are at the top of these healthcare conglomerates. They look at smaller government and they equate it as, well, that's going to be less money to hospitals or something like that.
Well, it would be, and we're talking about tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in savings for these. Do you know that
for the government?
For the government, well, for the taxpayer.
For the taxpayer, yeah, that's what I meant to say. Sorry.
And the telehealth and the advanced practice nurses were both in the Stevens report, but they never came up. Of course, I wasn't on the committee, and when I'd ask about them, I couldn't. We never could have a viable discussion, but that was killed by the people that are supporting my opponent. That's where that comes from. And of course, the biggest one, I've ran the bill to limit Medicaid expansion. Let's stop that.
Yeah.
And I know you were a part of a conversation I had with some other people. The government, the state has claimed they cut 73,000 people off of Medicaid, but we still have about 285 on there. So their claim, it's kind of like the tax claim. We're cutting your taxes over here, but we're raising your taxes over here, and the net is different from what the savings are claimed to be. And the same is true when we try to reduce the numbers. We may have reduced 73,000, but we actually added another 25 or 30,000.
Yeah.
So the net cost doesn't go down. I hate to get down in the weeds on this stuff, but I know your listeners are pretty educated on these kind of things.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, they surely are. But I just wanted to. I'm glad you brought up your opposition to Arkansas Works in terms of that, but let's talk about that specifically, because what we're hearing is like, well, you people who are anti-Obamacare, you don't have a plan, but that's not true. Actually, there are viable plans out there. Talk about what the plan is.
Well, had we been able to cap that number, that would have been a good start. Paul, I think everybody can relate to this. If you were going to buy a large product. Maybe you're going to buy a home. Maybe you're going to buy a car. Maybe you're just going to buy a pair of shoes. You go out and comparative shop, and you say, show me what that price looks like. What do I get? What are my benefits? What all the issues are. And you look at that contract and read through it. Again, whatever you're purchasing, people do that. I sat down in Lake City one day, and they had with their city council, they argued for probably, I shouldn't say argued, they had a lively discussion over $50 on a new garbage truck. I sat down in the Brooklyn City Council, and they're talking about running new water lines and what those costs are. The whole task force the goal of the task force was to see how we could keep Arkansas Works going, not how to look at a separate plan and what options there were to cut the taxes. And the whole purpose and I won't speak for Representative Miller, for Josh, but for me, the purpose of that no vote, or one of the purposes, was to force our legislature into having an open debate so that people could have a side-by-side comparison. What does it look like if we go through with Arkansas Works? What does it look like if we go to a 90-10 match, which many states do?
Yeah, traditional Medicaid.
Traditional Medicaid. Go down to 90-10. What does that look like? And you heard it, the comment that was made, well, this ship has already sailed. But we don't need to see comparatively what that looks like. We actually asked for that comparison several months before the vote came up. And I think it was maybe a week or 2 weeks before we got a little one-pager. So here we've got a $1.7 billion program in Arkansas Works. And we're just asking for a comparative list, a valid discussion, a viable discussion.
They don't want to have the discussion.
Where we have those numbers and we can debate that. That's what Senator King wanted to do.
Yeah.
But that bill got voted down, and there was very little discussion, maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah. The numbers are it's certainly controlled in terms of when they come out and things like that, and it makes it really frustrating. There's just not the political will to have the debate, but I think it's clear. You've got a record, Dan Sullivan, that stands for limited government. It's not just like you said earlier, it's not just the Conduit for Commerce scorecard that you did so well, and did so well on so many of them. You've got one of the most conservative voting records in the entire state, and that sometimes will make the bigger government sorts. Let me say this. Every time you make a conservative vote and maybe somebody else makes a liberal vote, you look like a conservative and they look like a liberal.
Well, Paul, some of these are quotes from other people, or my paraphrase of quotes, but one of them is, anytime power and wealth are centralized, they become a threat to freedom. That's what's happening at our state level. We're centralizing the wealth, we're centralizing the power, and the same thing is happening in District 53. The centralized wealth, the centralized power. The people that are, and one of the things they did in picking my opponent, they just kind of picked a blank sheet. My opponent has no record on anything. We can't find any record.
I'd love for him to come on the program.
We'll, and maybe we're having a debate April 21st.
Really? Okay.
In Lake City, Arkansas, at the First Baptist Church, 3 p.m. on a Saturday. Mr. Peck and I are debating, and I hope you can be there. I hope we can get a lot of folks to turn out, and maybe I'll ask him publicly at that time when he can join the show, and we'll see if he can do that.
He's welcome to come on. I don't have his number, but I have reached out to his office, before. I'd like to know, what he thinks on just all of the issues that are traditional, the platform.
I've had several people tell me they've posted on his Facebook page and asked him some questions. Why are you running against Representative Sullivan? He's got a great conservative record. What is it in his record that you're going to change? They tell me that those posts are hidden, or those posts are not responded to publicly, or he will call them and just ask if he can discuss it privately. But if you have listeners that like to ask that question, I'm sure we'd like to. Again, how are you going to beat Dan Sullivan? What does it take? You're going to have somebody, because they can't challenge me on my record on life. My record on life is as solid and strong as anybody's in the House. You're going to have to do it on the liberty side, and you're going to have to do it very quietly, because my record as a conservative is strong.
Yeah, they're not going to.
Liberty.
Yeah, and they're not going to come out and say, "Well, he's trying to save taxpayer money."
Yeah.
We got to stop him from saving taxpayer money. It'll be something else,
Yes, it is, and it's going to be over the taxes, and it's over health care. My opponent is a special interest candidate. You can look at who donates to him. It's all the medical conglomerate and the medical monopoly. And folks, remember this PBM. Part of the problem with the PBMs, if you'll remember, was Arkansas Works.
Yeah, it created the problem.
It was the money going there to the insurance companies that created the problem for our local pharmacies. When you look at the property rights issue, and you've talked about the hog farm and the impact of big government on the hog farm and on our local farmers, our local farmers are upset about that just because of the infringement on property rights. Our advanced practice nurses who have gone to school, highly qualified, their intellectual knowledge is a property right that they're being stifled on, and they cannot use, are allowed to compete in the free market. And our medical, the big medical there's a lot of money in that, and they are ready to stop any challenge to their monopoly on those systems.
Yeah. I really, we're out of time, State Representative Dan Sullivan, but I really like your slogan, from God to us, life and liberty, because it does really encompass, the liberty aspect. We can talk forever about, more freedom, and then the life aspect, without life and the sanctity of it, you can't have liberty at all. I mean, there's not even a debate for that.
Plug one more thing real quick.
Absolutely.
We have a dyslexia awareness golf tournament at Sage Meadows on April 28th. This is the third year my wife and I have sponsored that. We raise money for kids with dyslexia. 100% of the money goes to that program. And you can contact me.
And what's the date on that again?
That's April the 28th.
Okay. All right, April the 28th. State Representative Dan Sullivan.
Thank you, Paul. Good to be here.
Appreciate it. Folks, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplrpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, it's Conduit News Radio. We're winding up. It was a very eventful Monday morning. Really appreciate you being with us. And I want to thank State Representative Dan Sullivan once again for coming on the program. And let's see, we have a pretty big show for you guys, or really a whole week. Joe, I'm computerless here. So can in one of these screens, don't necessarily show it to the audience. I just would like to see our schedule, because we have some really good guests coming up throughout the week today, and maybe even more, maybe even have some more time to book them. Let me see here if we can't pull it up. Yeah. So let's see here. We just got through with Dan Sullivan. So tomorrow on the program at 7:05, we'll be talking with Michael Sullivan, actually, no relation, the president and CEO of Empower Texas, which is a group very, very much like Conduit, just in terms of it's a state-focused organization, to try to limit government and that sort of thing. And then we have the chief executive officer of Citizens Alliance for Pennsylvania, which is Lau Kepner. No. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Leo. Sorry, I can't read this. Okay, so Leo Knepler, I believe. He's going to be on Thursday. And then we have the political director for the Middle Resolution out of Virginia. Yeah, you should be the one reading this, but we're done. That's the end of the list. Nancy Smith will be with us on Friday at 7:05. Now none of them are coming on now because I mispronounced their names and got their organizations wrong. But anyway, we'll have state organizations from Texas, Pennsylvania, and Virginia on the program this week. Also more as the schedule fills out. Folks, that's all the time we have for today. Go to conduitnews.com to get video archives and podcasts. Go to facebook.com/Conduit News if you've missed the program today and you want to watch the rest of it. When you get to work, go to facebook.com/Conduit News, click the like button. And if you go to YouTube at all today, which I know some of you people going in an office are going to go to YouTube today to kill some time, go to Conduit News and click the like or the subscribe button and then the notification button and go watch Hannah Webb, who did an interview with us. It's a very popular video right now because it's about a sitting governor that essentially targets a 20-something-year-old college student for supporting Jan Morgan, a political opponent that Asa Hutchinson doesn't like. That's all the time we have. Arkansas, have a great Monday and be safe.